So, should you buy an expensive guitar? Maybe. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome to Boomer Jazz Guitar. My name is Rich Kettner. Purpose of this channel is geared to people who have been playing guitar for decades. Maybe you come up as a rock or blues or country player, but you're getting closer to retirement, or maybe you've just recently retired. If so, congratulations. And you have more time to dedicate to playing guitar, and you're just trying to maybe dip your toe into jazz guitar and check some stuff out. If that describes you, you're in the right place. So, expensive guitars, should you buy them? Short answer would be maybe. You know, it kind of comes down to several different pointers. So I'm going to talk about maybe why you would, and talk about reasons for maybe why you would not, or kind of my 2 cents of how I've gotten to where I'm at. I'm 68. I've been playing over 55 years. And I've had really expensive guitars, and I've had really inexpensive guitars that were just as good to me. So, expensive guitars. Well, if you're independently wealthy, say you're a retired doctor or a lawyer or some big CEO with tons of money, great, good for you. And you can afford to do that guitar, more power to you. Or another thing is maybe you've always wanted a certain kind of guitar. I can relate to that. When I was younger, a lot of my heroes, or when I came up, like I said, I'm 68. So I really came up, started playing when I was 11 or 12, late 60s, kind of developed as a guitar player in the early to mid 70s. And guys that were my heroes on guitar, Joe Pass, Jim Hall, Steve Howe from Yes, other jazz players were playing big hollow body jazz guitars. And I kind of thought that's what you need to have to be a jazz player. And I had wanted the ES-175. I never did get one. I came close. Maybe I'll come back to that later. But also when I came up, the guitars in America that were most popular, and I'm not talking acoustic guitars, I'm talking electric, it was either Fender guitars or Gibson, right? So Fender Strats or Telecasters or maybe SGs as far as rock players. But then there was the ES-175 and 335s and L5s, Birdlands, that kind of stuff, Super 400s. And, those were the big name guitars. There was Rickenbacker and I guess Gretsch. But that was kind of the guitars you'd buy. And as far as Japanese guitars, I talk about this in some of my other videos. Japanese guitars, when I was a kid, were really crappy. I remember seeing these guitars that would have 4 and 5 pickups, and they just looked really cheesy. And they were not very good until the Japanese figured it out. And it was, I guess, mid-70s. Suddenly they started figuring out and started making incredible guitars. But because they had such a bad track record, at first, they had to almost give their guitars away because people were like, oh, Japanese guitars are no good. But I remember by the late 70s, they started making great guitars. So I mentioned the ES-175. I was in the Marine Corps, in the Marine Band. And then I was stationed in New Orleans, and somehow someone came into our building one day and said they were building a local bowling alley and needed some guys to work. They were under the gun to get it finished. So they had a day shift that wanted us to work a night shift. I thought, you know what, if I do that for a month or so, I can get enough money together to buy an ES-175 like Joe Pass. At that time, I was playing a Gibson L6S. Looked kind of like a SG. Carlos Santana played one at the time. Had 2 humbuckers, and like a pickup selector, had like 6 different sounds. It was kind of a cool guitar, but not a jazz guitar. So I did this thing for, I don't know, a month, 2 months maybe, got the money together, even went to a music store. And I got to check out one ES-175, and I was gonna buy it, but because I was in the Marine Band and we traveled quite a bit, we'd fly from place to place. And when we flew, I'd bring my guitar with me. I said, well, I need a flight case. Oh, that's another couple $100. I didn't have that much money. He said, but we have this guitar that comes with a flight case. And he brought it out, a big silver rectangular case, and it was a George Benson Ibanez guitar. And it was beautiful. It was maybe not as big, not as thick as a 175, but it was a pretty cool guitar. And I ended up buying that. So the moral here was, at that point I realized the whole idea of Japanese making crappy guitars, that is no longer true. They figured it out. They're making great guitars. And then I got into the early 80s when I went to college, and I was doing a gig with a big band where George Benson wasn't cutting it, and I needed something different, something more versatile. And I was a big fan of Larry Carlton, who played a 335. I was also a fan of Scofield, who plays a semi-hollow body. And I went back to Ibanez, and I got an Ibanez AS200, which was kind of their version of a 335. Super nice guitar. Turned out that was the guitar that Scofield played for a long, long time, decades. And it was a beautiful guitar. So my point is, I learned my lesson at that point. Instead of being concerned about the name on the headstock, Gibson or Fender or Taylor or whatever it is, Martin, if the guitar plays great and it does what you need it to do, I'm fine with that. And so fast forward to today, I'm a retired teacher. I was a band director for 31 years. So as a teacher, I don't have, I'm not independently wealthy. Didn't have tons of money put aside to spend on guitars. So after learning my lesson with those Ibanez, I started looking for a nice, like a hollow body jazz guitar, now about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. And I discovered the name Eastman. And that was new to me. But I saw lots of articles, did a lot of reading, and at the time they had a guitar. It was an Eastman AR371. And what it essentially looked like was an ES175 with just one, like a neck pickup. I ended up buying it, and it was great. And the big, big difference was an ES175, brand new, would have been $4,500, maybe $6,000. This Eastman cost me, I believe, $750. Now, it was not a 175, but it played great, and it really sounded quite good. And that was a new lesson for me again, that, you know what, these Eastman guitars are great. After that guitar, I then got a semi-hollow Eastman, which was a T386. Nice guitar, little lifeless in the pickups. I ended up selling that to buy one called the T59V. I mentioned in my last video that the T59V is a 335 killer. It had Seymour Duncan antiquity pickups in it, and it was just an incredible guitar. If I was 20 years old, that would be my dream guitar. My only issue was it was quite heavy. It had the center block, and I've broken both of my collarbones, so the weight was kind of a bit much. I sold it, and I replaced it with this guitar here, which is an Eastman T64V, which is fully hollow. It's like a Gibson 330, and I love this guitar. It's amazing. So, so great. Other Eastman, I have two other Eastmans actually. Right here, this orangey thing is a John Pisano 380. Now, it's not as big as a 175, but it plays very nice, very comfortable, sounds great. And I should mention the prices. This one, I think I got for about $1,700. The Pisano was about $1,400. And then I also have an acoustic Eastman. This guitar over here is an Eastman I think ACOM1, I believe that's the name. I don't think they make it anymore. I've looked online and I can't locate it. It was only $750, maybe $800. It didn't have a pickup, so I added a K&K mini pickup. And I think it sounds great. I really like it. So my point would be, for me, I've gotten beyond the name. And I just want to find instruments that do what I want them to do, what I need them to do. So another thing with the expensive guitars is the whole signature guitar thing. You know, I know you can go to the Fender Pro Shop and have a guitar made like the Stevie Ray Vaughan model, his Strat with all the scratches and the SRV letters and all, or a PRS, the Carlos Santana model, or the it's like a John Mayer version, right? Or any other Eric Johnson signature Strat kind of thing. My point is, you can buy those guitars, you're not going to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Or you can buy the PRS and have Carlos's exact same instrument, even the same amp, the same pedals, you are not going to sound like him. Because the instrument alone doesn't do it. A big part of it is just your touch on the instrument, the way you play, as well as how you approach the instrument. So all that to say, you can pour all kinds of money into the instrument. That doesn't guarantee you you're going to get a sound like of your guitar hero. So, you know, that whole thing of signature guitars seems silly to me. Now, if you have the money again, if you can afford to do that, that's cool. If you'd like to do that, I'm not saying anybody shouldn't do that. And I don't mean to sound like sour grapes because I don't have the money to do it. For me, I'm approaching this as a gigging guitar player. You know, I used to have a Gibson L5, which now costs, even used, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 easy. It was a gift from a friend. I'll spare you the story, but I ended up getting rid of the instrument. And one of the reasons was, if I'm going to go to a gig, I'm not going to go to a gig that pays me $50 or $100 and bring a $5,000 or $6,000 guitar, or play in a bar or a restaurant. Because frankly, the majority of the people in the audience, if not everyone, no one's going to know the difference between me playing a $6,000 guitar or a $5,000 knockoff of, you know, some other instrument. And so for me, it's just kind of being more pragmatic. Now, would I love to have an ES-175? Sure. But at this point, I just cannot justify spending that kind of money on one of these instruments. I've played really expensive Fenders that I was just not impressed with. I've played Gibson guitars, brand new, uninspired, just not impressed with them at all. And I picked up these Eastman guitars, and they play like butter, and I love them. So for me, these guitars work. Now, I discovered these a little bit more than 10 years ago. I believe now the prices have gone up as more and more people find out what's happening with Eastman guitars. And I'm afraid maybe now with our current political climate, with all the tariff stuff, I really don't know if it has driven the prices up quite a bit. It might have done that. A downside to Eastman guitars, they're not a real big investment, but I don't buy guitars as investments. I buy them as instruments that I can play, right? So, in conclusion, do I buy expensive guitars? If you have the money to do it and you just love the instrument and are going to play it, great. I guess I would just say, if I had the means to buy those kind of instruments, I think I would do a long, hard search and look inside and say, well, why do I want to buy this? What is this instrument going to do for me? Is it about prestige? Am I going to put it in a case under my bed and save it for 40 years, or just put it on the wall as a piece of art? I mean, I guess you can do that, and that's valid. But for me, I always think these instruments are meant to be played, and I want to play them. And I don't mind if they get a couple of dings or scratches, because that's kind of like a badge. You know, it's kind of like, hey, it's been played. This is a player's instrument. I like that idea. You know, when I pass, I would love these instruments to go to someone who I know is going to play them. Like I have a nephew who plays. I might give them to him because my son doesn't play, my daughter doesn't play. And I wouldn't want them just to sit on a shelf somewhere. I want them to be used and someone to enjoy them. And I'd love to hear what you think, or what guitars you have that you just love. That, you know, maybe one is your main guitar. If you're going to have one guitar, maybe I need to do a video about that, like a desert island guitar. If you could only have one guitar, what would it be? I know what mine would be. and I'll wait to do it in the next video. So love to hear your comments. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you think you have a friend that could maybe benefit from this or would enjoy any of this content, please share the channel with them. And as always, enjoy the journey. God bless.